Hello, everyone. If you want to take a quick moment to stretch after that meditation, sit and perhaps turn to smile at a neighbor in a kind way, wave, greet our Sangha mates. So my name is Denise, and I'm one of the 6 Dharma leaders here at IMCC. Welcome. And on this dreary, bone-chilling evening, in a world full of uncertainty and fear, I would like to talk to you about joy and gratitude. Not long ago, Thea, one of our Dharma leaders, had given a lovely Dharma talk. And she discussed having a real connection with the heart, a genuine feeling of well-being for self and for others. You could really feel she was in that energy. She was exuding it. I thought, how lovely, how generous, and how totally unguarded. What most affected me, besides the lovely talk, was the state of her mind and heart. And our Dharma leader, Debbie, who's with us on Zoom tonight, she does tremendous work on cultivating and studying metta, loving kindness. Not that all our Dharma leaders don't, but Debbie has a particular love for this teaching. And when sharing her experience of metta, she just looks so dang happy, fueled by good spirit. And I think to myself, hey, I'd like to get myself some of that. I don't typically have those feelings as readily available. I tend to hold my cards a little closer to my chest. And in 2025, I have chosen 2 New Year's resolutions that are very important to me. I want to take this year to find more joy and loving kindness as an intention, to foster it as a state of being, even when I'm finding that my circumstances are not what I think they should be or what I want them to be. The other resolution is not to eat chocolate. And so far, it has been far easier to not eat chocolate than it has been to stay with love and joy. I'm trying to be present in the moment and to really detect any moments of joy, whether it be in a beautiful environment or a kind word or perhaps an accomplishment. But I can also experience joy by seeing someone else who is living the experience of joy. In their presence, I can feel that. I'm not stealing theirs. Theirs is multiplying. I'm just the witness. Mudita is the Pali word for what's called empathetic joy. You may also hear this called sympathetic, altruistic, or unselfish joy. It is to have delight in another's well-being, gladness, to be pleased for someone else due to their own good fortune. Mudita is part of the 4 Brahma Viharas, also known as the 4 divine abodes, abode being a dwelling place. And the 4 Brahma Viharas are, and I'm going to first give the Pali word, that's the language spoken at the time of the Buddha, and then I'm going to give the English translation. So the first of the 4 Brahma Viharas is metta, and it means loving kindness. Karuna is the second, and that's compassion. The third is mudita, or empathetic joy. And the 4th is upekkha, or equanimity. Dharma teacher Gary Armstrong reminds us, loving kindness opens our heart. An open heart in someone else's suffering is compassion. And an open heart in someone's joy is empathetic joy. And being with what is without needing to change it is equanimity. These are wonderful places to live. Buddhist intellectual and scholar Leslie Oates wrote, "The ability to feel genuine joy in another's happiness equal to one's satisfaction with one's own happiness represents a truly sublime state. If someone else is in a good state, and if they are well, that's less for us to worry about. Less worry for their own well-being, less worry for how they might affect our well-being. And I think most people would agree, it's easier to be in the presence of someone who's experiencing joy and gratitude than it is to be with someone who maybe can't even find a drop of positivity or gratitude. Celebrate someone else's joy. It just might lead to happiness for others. We are so practiced at detecting suffering. We can fail to recognize that we also have the opportunity to practice joy. There's plenty of suffering out there in the world for us to observe. That's if we're not already totally absorbed in our own suffering. But we can also choose to open our minds, our hearts, and our eyes to detect examples of joy. Moments of joy can help us to refuel, help us step away from self-absorption. Practicing awareness of joy can help us to more readily and naturally attune to additional moments of joy. Buddhist teacher Nyanaponika Thera wrote, sympathetic joy, that's another word for empathetic joy, similar, holds compassion back from becoming overwhelmed by the sight of the world's suffering, from being absorbed by it, to the exclusion of everything else. It relieves tension in the mind and soothes the painful burning of the compassionate heart. It keeps compassion from becoming a melancholic brooding without purpose, from futile sentimentality that merely weakens and consumes the strength of the mind and the heart. She says, admittedly, the negative impulses in man, it says man, but I know it's women too, like aggression, envy, jealousy, etc., are much more in evidence than the positive tendencies towards communal service, mutual aid, unselfish joy, generous appreciation of the good qualities of fellow men. Yet all of these positive features are definitely found in man and women, and it is quite realistic to appeal to them and activate and develop that potential by whatever means we can in our personal relationships. The Buddha said, if it were impossible to cultivate the good, I would not tell you to do so. I'd like to take a look at the different types of joy that are described onto mudita. There's empathetic joy, also sympathetic joy, altruistic joy, appreciative joy, and unselfish joy. There may be others, those are the ones I found. Empathetic joy implies a deeper emotional connection. This is where you actively share in the other person's emotions and experience joy almost as if it was your own. It may arise from a strong personal bond. It can involve actively imagining yourself in that other person's situation. And a foundation of genuine friendliness for another is essential for accessing empathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is described to be slightly different. It's more of a general feeling of happiness for someone else's good fortune, but it's not quite as deep an understanding of their individual situation. This might be more of like congratulating someone or having positive comments towards someone, maybe someone you're not quite as close with or as attached to, which is another story. Feeling positively for someone else's good fortune without necessarily fully immersing yourself in that experience. It's more about acknowledging and appreciating their happiness from a slightly detached perspective. An example of sympathetic joy might be when you have an acquaintance and they tell you they just became a grandparent for the first time. You're like, hey, that's great. And you can imagine that'd be pretty exciting for them, right? But I think empathetic joy might be a little bit more like you see your best buddy just had the birth of his first child, and you share a strong hug with a strong, good little pat on the back, knowing fully to your core how beautiful this is for them. Everyone wants happiness and not to suffer. Leslie Rhodes also wrote that being grounded in friendliness for all beings implies a recognition that all beings are subject to joy and sorrow, just as we are. And we find natural sympathy, compassion for their sorrows and for the joys of their blessings. Appreciative joy is when you actively recognize and value the positive aspects of someone else's happiness, often accompanied by a sense of gratitude and goodwill. This makes me think of my dear friend Mary, who I just met up with this weekend. She was telling me that she now found out she can retire at 62 instead of 67. Now, that would have been an opportunity for jealousy for me because I'm counting down to my retirement in regular increments, and I have 7 1/8 years to go. Okay, so right. So, but that wasn't how I felt. I actually felt tremendous joy for her because she has some health problems and she's in an extremely difficult job, doing actually a wonderful service for our community, but it taxes her. So I couldn't feel more happy for her that she's going to get to retire a little sooner and really have valuable quality years. And she does have her first grandchild on the way. We try to tap into someone else's good fortune when we're looking at appreciative joy. And you can ask yourself, hey, can I conjure up inside what it might feel like for the other person? Imagine their gratitude. Would it feel similar to what you think you would feel when you have gratitude or joy? Can you wish that appreciative feeling for another? Gratitude is a sensation and emotion. Okay, and we can even go into our body to see what that feels like, just like all of our other emotions. And the more we get in touch with that, the more readily we can recognize when we have joy and gratitude, but we can also relate to someone else when they might have that situation. And I think some of us here, not many of us here, might actually have the gift of being able to detect it without words or anything, kind of feel that energy a bit. You don't want to take up too much energy of others, but just enough to know their joy and gratitude. Thanissaro Bhikkhu had a translation of what's called the Katanu Sutta on gratitude. He said, the Blessed One said, now, what is the level of a person of no integrity? A person of no integrity is ungrateful and unthankful. In this ingratitude and lack of thankfulness, it is advocated by rude people. It is entirely on the level of people of no integrity. A person of integrity is grateful and thankful. Gratitude reminds our brains of what we do have. In our bodies, we release a neurotransmitter called oxytocin when we have gratitude. That's the neurotransmitter that fosters connection, interconnection, and it is at the base of love. With so many things today, we are being led by our noses for dopamine hits, whether it be with our phones calling us, not literally, it could be a text, a ding, anything. It can be gambling, sweets, drinks. But what we're really looking for is oxytocin. It helps us to recognize other people. It helps us in building trust. It helps lower our levels of stress and anxiety, and it promotes bonding. We cannot have happiness in isolation. We are wired to be connected. If our friend or a company of the moment is not in a state of joy or gratitude, it can be hard for us to be in true joy and not have a touch of suffering, unless we have a really good practice. Another benefit of gratitude awareness is we can take the moment away from being so consumed with our own selves. Oh, how exhausting being us can be. So far, we've looked at empathetic joy, sympathetic joy, and appreciative joy. And now I'd like to look at altruistic joy. This comes from the act of doing something kind for someone else, even if you don't have a close personal connection. It focuses on the positive impact of your actions, something like donating to charity or volunteering. I know that when our Sangha has its meta volunteer events, they are joyous events. In those moments, we are grateful not only for the joy of being together, but for the opportunity to share goodwill with our community. And now, unselfish joy. Joy, mudita, is a selfless emotion, free of ego. A genuine feeling of joy for another person, independent of our own situation or desires. The Buddha said, "Hear, O monks. A disciple lets his mind pervade 1/4 of the world with thoughts of unselfish joy, and so the 2nd quarter, and so the 3rd and the 4th. And thus the whole wide world, above, below, around, everywhere, and equally, he continues to pervade the heart of unselfish joy, abundant, grown great, measureless, without hostility or ill will." Now, we all have probably experienced that joy can have some enemies. And we have this teaching on the enemies and recognizing the enemies of joy because we don't always find ourselves in the sublime state of mudita. These states that follow are not empathetic joy. They are called the near and the far enemies. The near enemies of joy are comparison, insincere joy, or exuberance, because it can be non-genuine. It's almost not caring about it so that you don't get too close to it. And it might be only focusing on the worldly gains rather than on the good qualities or choices of the other person. The far enemy of mudita is jealousy, envy, greed, resentment, or indifference. There's a German word, I can't say the English one of word, but I'm going to go for Schadenfreude. Okay, so maybe next time we'll do this all in German. Take pleasure. It's to take pleasure in the misfortune of others, and it's rooted in selfishness. It keeps us from experiencing true joy. Charles Knight, in his article on mudita, wrote about the effects of the 3 defilements, greed, hatred, and delusion. And he calls them the fires from the Buddha's fire sermon. It is of these 3 fires that give rise to jealousy, envy, covetousness, avarice, and greed. The craving for possessions, sensual pleasures, the begrudging of the success of others, the hatred that is begotten for the gains of others, the odious comparison of greater status compared with our humble circumstances. These are the fires that burn us to our own undoing. We probably don't admit too much of this to anybody except maybe a best friend and hope they agree when we do it. But we're not usually in a good state when we're doing that. So how do we cultivate empathetic joy? Life seems to keep getting tougher and tougher and the world more challenging. But joy and the opportunities for gratitude have not been obliterated. To experience joy, whether it be our own or another's, we need to be awake and receptive. We can try starting a practice of trying to recognize authentic joy, getting to truly know what joy means to us and how it feels in our body and in our mind. That'll help you to recall and have the feeling readily when another is in the recipient of good fortune, or if we're experiencing joy. Sometimes we can say, oh, that's nice, and then move on, instead of just taking a half second with that and really feeling it. Or he can bring to mind a loved one who may have had some happy experience and you want to be happy for their good fortune. Let those feelings from your heart be aware to you. That doesn't sound correct. Sorry. Feel them. Feel those feelings. Sit with them. Develop them. And if feelings of jealousy arise, hold these with loving kindness. Know that these are just thoughts and don't give energy to them. You may reflect on the ability or talent of someone you know and the joy they have in expressing that ability. Have you ever seen someone sing truly from the heart? Not like they're singing at you or trying to sell a record or a concert or something like that, but really feeling it, and you just feel kind of that vibration inside. Maybe. You might want an accountability buddy. I have an accountability buddy. That's Mary, who I'm so happy for. What we do is daily, we've been doing this for a number of years now, we text each other our 3 gratitudes for the day, the 2 things we're learning about ourselves, and the 1 thing we love about ourselves. And then we have like a little prayer hands of what we wish going forward, and then we send a greeting to each other. And it's really developed a wonderful friendship. If you have a Dharma buddy, this might be something you can consider in your practice. When I'm having a tough day or feeling anxious or worried, I go and I send my gratitudes to her. It helps remind me I'm okay. And you can do mudita meditation practice, just like you might do your metta practice. And we're going to do a little bit of that tonight. And you might use such statements such as these. May your happiness and good fortune not leave you. May your happiness not diminish. May this bring my friend greater happiness. And if you want, you can try this one. I don't remember my source in this. I think I made this one up. May I comport myself in a way that doesn't diminish your happiness. Lastly, may I and we find another's joy, sparking joy and gratitude in us. And may we be a source of joy for another.